I welcome you all for the 8th Creative Theory Colloquium 2021. The title for this year's colloquium was COVID-19 Pandemic, Grassroots Experiences and Democratic Responses. The colloquium was organized by Foundation for Creative Social Research.
Creative Theory Colloquium, and the theme for this year is COVID-19 Grassroots Experiences, Democratic Responses. We have had 6 thought provoking and intellectually loaded sessions till now, and I am sure that nothing short will be expected from the remaining sessions. So, the topic for this session is COVID-19 responses and experiences from the farmers' movement. The chair for the session is Satish K. Jha, Associate Professor of Political Science at Aryabhatta College, University of Delhi. We have 3 speakers for the session. Swaiman Singh, MD, Summa Cum Laude, founder, Five Rivers Heart Association. The second speaker will be Akhil Gogoi, who is a sitting member of the Assam Legislative Assembly from Sibsagar and is also the president of the Raijo Dal, a regional political party in Assam. He has also been active in farmers' issues as a peasant leader. Our third speaker is Mr. Daljit Ami, a documentary filmmaker, columnist, translator, and journalist, and he is one of the foremost chroniclers of contemporary Punjab. Our discussant for the session will be Ishwar Singh Dost, who is a freelance writer, journalist, and researcher based in Bhopal. The rapporteur for the session is Angarag Shandilya, MA student at the Center for Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. I now request the chair to take over and begin the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Survesh. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. In fact, now today, we are approaching the end of this 2 days very engaging and engrossing creative theory colloquium, as it happens every year on these days, 5th and 6th of September. Now, in this session, as announced by Survesh, today we are going to discuss a theme which has been hogging the limelight, at least among the people in the civil society for last 1 year or so. That is the farmers' movement, and incidentally, that coincided with this outbreak of this pandemic. But still, the farmers were unrelenting. They basically held their ground in spite of all sorts of methods and tactics used by the powers, by the establishment and the state machinery. And they have been holding their ground, unrelenting in their protest, and particularly in terms of the demands they have put forth. So that's why this session is very special for us from the point of view of the creative theory colloquium. As we have been debating about number of issues being confronted by the people and how this pandemic has aggravated them, posing new types of challenges. And it is in this context, this farmers movement, taking stock of this farmers movement, their issues, demands, and the larger issues this entire movement is posing. It is not only issue of survival. That is there, no one can deny it, MSP and other things. But there are many civilisational issues which also it brings to the fore. So, in fact, in next, say, 2 hours, we'll be debating and discussing all these issues. In fact, this Creative Foundation for Creative Social Research had organized, a very rich debate and discussion on this theme in month of April in collaboration with 2 other organizations, where a number of activists, experts, scholars, media people who have been covering this farmers movement, participated, presented their paper, and that was a very important intervention in this entire debate and this movement. So I think we can see it as a continuation of that process so far as the Foundation for Creative Social Research is concerned. And without taking much of your time, we have 3 speakers as has been announced by Survesh. I think that straight away we should go to the first speaker, Swaiman Singh. But in order to slightly rationalize the time, in fact, what I suggest that every speaker should take 15 to 20 minutes, and so that we can have slightly more time for discussion and debate. Thank you. With these words, I just invite. So, Daljit, I think that you'll have the other two speakers are here to join.
First of all, I'm really thankful to all the organizers who have invited me and organized this colloquium, and I'm really happy to be part of this. I'll try to contribute a bit, whatever I can. So before continuing with my presentation, I just want to state it right in the beginning that I'm a journalist. So I have made documentary films, and I have traveled Punjab and Haryana extensively over a period of say around 25 years. So I have watched this movement from media, and I have been to some of the rallies, to protest sites, but I'm not a very regular visitor of the protest site. So, but as I'm familiar with most of the organizations who are participating, so whenever there's saying something, I'm familiar with the context and I know their background. So that way I can say that I'm an outsider as I'm not going there, but I'm an insider as I know them pretty well from their practices of last, say, 20-25 years. So with this background, I'll start with some detail of pre-COVID period, that is January, February 2020 2020. So my focus will mostly remain Punjab, and some of the context is extended to Haryana. So I'll keep on mentioning that whenever there is Haryana part of my discussion. So mostly I'll confine to Punjab. So as I'm familiar with Punjab more. So I was working in Delhi for say around 5 years. So I know a bit about the filters which people from Delhi or national media look at Punjab from. So I'm a bit familiar with the limitations of their lenses and the media coverage. So I'll talk about that too. So before the COVID started, so most of the unions which are part of these protests against new farm laws, so they were part of different kind of protests. So these farm unions come from different backgrounds, and they represent different geographical areas, and their understanding about issues and the strategies to fight on those issues are quite different. So most of the organizations which are part of this agitation, which add to the number when it comes to 32. So most of the organizations are from sugarcane areas, and those organizations are confined to their particular sugar mill areas. So their issues are associated with overdue payments and issues related with the mills. So they are representing the people who are going to a particular mill. So that's why the number is so big. And then Punjab has three main geographical areas, starting from the western side. It is Majha, which is between Ravi and Beas. Then there is Doaba, which is between Beas and Satluj. Then there is Malwa, which is Satluj, and on the other side is Haryana. So the organizations which are dominating the whole narrative, they represent Malwa region. Malwa region is the biggest in the East Punjab. When I say East Punjab, it means the Punjab which is part of India. So in East Punjab. So just give you the context that Punjab has 117 assembly constituencies, and out of those 117, 67 are in Malwa region. Uh, so this is the context. So before the coronavirus, there were issues related with agriculture and issues of farm workers. So there were protests in different parts of Punjab on different issues. But one big issue was the agitation against three citizenship laws. So that is, we all know CAA and CRNPR. So I don't mind asserting it that Punjab was the biggest center of that agitation. I can repeat it that I said that Punjab was the biggest center. It was much bigger a center as far as participation of people is concerned in compared to Delhi. So most of the time the stress is on Delhi and then on Shaheen Bagh, whereas numerically there were huge rallies in Punjab. Although the Muslim population in Punjab is less than 2%, it's around 1.7%, and it is focused in two cities. One of the cities in Malwa, which is Malerkotla. But there were huge agitations, and most of the organizations who were part of the farm agitation, they were part of that protest too. So rather they were leading that protest. And one of the so why Punjab was so concerned about citizenship law can be understood from a slogan. One of the slogan which was raised in Punjab is, it's in Punjabi, I'll translate it in English. The slogan is ਭਾਈ ਭਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਲੜਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣਾ, ਸਨ ਸਨ ਤਾਲੀ ਬਣਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣਾ. It means that we will not let the brother fight against the brother, and we will not let 1947 be repeated again. So that was the one of the major slogan in Punjab. So I assume that it is coming from a kind of repentance, a kind of experience which Punjab went through in 1947, and thereafter the mindless violence in 1984 and thereafter. So in that context, so Punjab was participating in that, and there were huge delegations from Punjab going to Delhi to participate in Shaheen Bagh, with the assertion that we are here not as Sikhs, not as Hindus or as Muslims. This most of the people used to state on the stage in Shaheen Bagh. And they used to say that we are here as citizens, we are here as democratic citizens of this country, and the issue you are raising is really important, so we stand by you. So why I'm saying giving this minute detail is that here comes one of the important filter on the lens which Delhi can't see certain things through. So when the people from Punjab go and say that we are here not as a Sikh, we are not here not as a Hindu, not as a Muslim, we are here as a democratic citizen of this country, the Delhi press ignore it altogether. They will go gaga around that here are Sikhs who are coming to support this. So wherever there are different backgrounds where people are coming from, most of the people who are supporting or participating in that protest, so they were opposing the Khalistani movement. They have fought against that movement, which Delhi and the national media most of the time miss. So when the national media was agitated against Modi's statement, when he said that you can identify the protesters from the clothes they are wearing, the people were agitated against that. What is Modi saying? This is communal. Whereas simultaneously, they were identifying the people from the turbans and stating their religion, rather than going what they are saying or how they are identifying themselves. So that is one of the important contexts which we need to understand. So when Punjab is participating in that kind of movement, so it is not just building a solidarity, it is building a kind of moral capital which will be there in the farm agitation thereafter. I'll come back to this, that this is the context of pre-coronavirus period. So then the coronavirus came in March, and then the restrictions were imposed. So at that time, the battle lines were already drawn between who is representing people and what kind of state uh, we have and what kind of analysis we have of the state and what kind of powers the state can use. Article 370 was already abrogated, and then these citizenship laws were already there, and then there was violence in Delhi, and then there were arrests in Bhima Koregaon case, and then the violence cases. So all that were there. So Punjab was all the time supporting the democratic rights people. They were supporting. When I am saying that Punjab was supporting, I mean the farmer unions, most of the unions who are participating in this. So, so in this background, Punjab entered that coronavirus phase. So, right in the beginning, as most of the people were very skeptical or cautious about the pandemic, what kind of pandemic it is, and what kind of impact it will have, what kind of propaganda is there. So same was the situation in here, a lot of hesitancy and then a lot of conspiracy theories. But very soon these unions realized that this is something really big and we need to take stock of it. So when the government imposed lockdown, huge number of migrant workers were on the road, and we became familiar with that image which was coming from Delhi. So in Punjab, most of these unions mobilized themselves and participated in the relief work. So they organized a relief, whether it was food items or it was shelter for the migrant people. So two kind of divides were there. So most of the people who were in trouble were in urban areas as the migrant labor, particularly when the industry shut down. The people are in urban areas where they don't have food, they don't have income to buy the food stuff. Whereas the farmer unions, their main area is the rural area. So the relief coming from a rural area and going into urban areas, this is building another kind of solidarity and a kind of moral capital, which will again go into the agitation against farm laws. So during that time, there were lots of restrictions on movement of people, whether it was the public transport, which was not at all available, or the restrictions imposed on private transport, which was that you can't drive a private vehicle on roads without the required pass, and then you can't have more than a stipulated number of passengers. So that in that kind of situation, the farmer workers, farm unions and the farm workers unions were participating in that. On the other side of it, one, the government failed to understand the kind of issues that migrant labor will face and then to provide them relief. And then there was an event called Tablighi Jamaat. The whole propaganda against Tablighi Jamaat and was part of or in continuity of what the media was stating before coronavirus. So it was another event in continuity of the earlier events, but the propaganda was same, the template was already there, but here was new context, which was this coronavirus. So that the Tablighi Jamaat propaganda, whether it was the media or it was the government press releases, where they were specifically mentioning, particularly Love Kumar, the Central Health Secretary, he used to mention it, that so many cases associated with Tablighi Jamaat have been found positive. So that kind of footprint of Tablighi Jamaat was just not visible in Delhi press releases, it was visible in Punjab government's press releases. So there was special column in media corona bulletins, which government used to, and still they issue it every day. So there used to be a special column, cases associated with Tablighi Jamaat. So one, the government is doing its stuff and the farmer unions are doing their own thing. So in this situation, the farmer unions decided, particularly I'm talking about the union which is the largest union, and they are stationed at Tikri border, and the name is Bharatiya Kisan Union Ekta Ugraha. So this union decided that people who are above the age of 65, they are not going to participate in any of the activities. As the coronavirus is there, they are more vulnerable to infection, so they'll be arrested home. So they took that decision. They made their ad hoc committees. There was an acting president, and similarly in districts and tehsils. So in that situation, then these ordinances were passed, three farm laws. So when they studied those farm laws, they immediately realized that it is something big. We need to mobilize all our forces. So then they decided that come what may, we are going all out in the agitation. So they decided that the people who were arrested because of the coronavirus, they need to come back. And one of the standard response of that decision was, यहाँ बाकी लोग मरेंगे, वहां पर ये भी मरेंगे. No issue at all. So that was a decision. It was very important decision for them. So then there were restrictions. So in those restrictions, within those restrictions, the agitation started. So the first part of that agitation started from the rooftops. As there was lockdown and there were lots of restrictions on the number of people who can gather on road or somewhere else. So the first agitation was on the rooftops, where people opposed these laws. So that kind of agitation can be considered in continuity of the drama which government was doing, whether it was Tali Thoko or appreciate the health workers or support Modi, any kind of that kind of the president of that kind of support mobilization was there. So that same space was used by these unions to reach out to the people. So then slowly and slowly, the small number of protests at different places started happening, and the government was very strict against them. So they many cases were filed against the protesters. So they were booked under section 270 of IPC, which is malignant act likely to spread infection. Then there was section 271 and so on. By that time, the Punjab government was very much against the protests, so they were hell-bent to impose a restriction to curtail coronavirus. And then the major regional party from Punjab was Shiromani Akali Dal. It was part of an all-out propaganda. It was stating right from the beginning that whatever protest is there, it is Congress propaganda, or it is communist propaganda, or it is against Akali BJP government only. So there is nothing wrong with the laws. These are very much pro farmer laws. So this was the Shiromani Akali Dal position by that time. So slowly, when the agitation started building, when the people started confronting police, when this then they started roadblocks, the government realized that it is not going to die down very soon. So thereafter, the attitude of Punjab government changed. So as BJP government is in the center, in Punjab it is Congress. So in that kind of situation, the state government became a bit helpful to the protest, and then the farmers decided that they are going to protest at two sites simultaneously. One of the site was in Patiala, which is the residence of Chief Minister Amrinder Singh. The other protest site was at Badal, which is a village of Prakash Singh Badal. The head of Shiromani Akali Dal, Sukhbir Singh Badal, is his son. So their headquarters. So when that protest started, it made government as well as Shiromani Akali Dal think about it, that this agitation is something really big. So thereafter, the agitation moved on. So I'll cut short, as most of the people are familiar with the details. Those happened during that time. So then the agitation moved to Delhi. By that time, the agitation's main argument about coronavirus was that if these laws will be implemented, the farmers are going to die. So there is no fun in taking precautions against the coronavirus or the pandemic when we are going to die through the implementation of these laws. So that kind of resistance was definitely there by that time. So when the second corona wave arrived, at that time it was really big, and the by that time the farmer agitation was really robust and sedate at the protest sites in Delhi. So it was really important that the propaganda can go against these protest sites, as it happened in the case of Tablighi Jamaat, so that they can anytime say that this is a super spreader gathering or event. So at that time, the farmer unions and the medical staff and the medical volunteers or doctors, we have Dr. Swaiman Singh with us, so he'll be sharing his experience with that. So they played very important role uh, in prevention as well as in treatment part. So the farmer unions, first they implemented a kind of social distancing, which was very much visible in the images coming from Delhi, and then they took certain kind of decisions that they will be providing sanitizers at the protest sites. So by the way, sanitizers were available at the protest site right from the word go. So once the farmers moved to Delhi, so there were volunteers, there were people who were coming to the protest site with stocks of sanitizer, and they were distributing it free. So that was there. And then at protest sites during second coronavirus wave, so they decided to take certain precautions. One is social distance maintain, and then providing the sanitizers, and then giving and asking them to retain their own water bottles, which can be filled from taps, but they'll not be distributing, or they'll not be taking water from the glasses that were available there. So then there were medicine, and then there were medical advices available. And then the farmer unions, without taking it a big call, but it was decided that they will motivate their workers to take vaccination and other stuff. So it is in this context that the farmer unions have dealt with coronavirus as well as that challenge from the central government. I think these are the details I wanted to share with you people. So if you have any questions about this, I'll be happy to respond to those questions in the discussion session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daljit Ami, for giving a very good account of what happened in Punjab. The blow-to-blow account that how this movement gradually got built up and moved on the borders of Delhi. And the number of issues you have highlighted through your presentation, particularly in context of Punjab, the communal amity, the lot of attempt, the success of this movement to foil all the attempts to divide the society along the religious lines, other issues. So I'm sure, when the discussion will start, a lot of questions will come to you. Now we have another speaker joining, Dr. Swaiman Singh. In fact, he will give his account of this entire farmers movement, because he has seen it, worked with it from close quarters. So without taking much time, I will invite Dr. Swaiman Singh to make his presentation. Dr. Swaiman Singh.
Hello, thank you, Satish K. Thank you, Daljit. Thank you for having me for the talk. Sorry, we were all at the stage, so I was a little bit late coming here. Farmers movement is at a new peak. I think everybody who has followed the Muzaffarnagar rally and the gathering in record numbers just has to note कि बहुत लोगों को ये बताया गया था कि वहाँ पे भीड़ बहुत होगी, आप मत आइए. So the still
थोड़ा सा ऑडियो थोड़ा सा ऑडियो डिस्टर्ब है स्वयमान जी, थोड़ा सा आवाज
Can
थोड़ी
hear
सी आ रही है। ठीक है, आपको है
उन लोगों को ठीक आ रहा है, उन
हाँ
लोगों
आप
को ठीक आ रहा है।
ओके गो अहेड।
Okay, so basically, that has been a huge success. The rally in Muzaffarnagar. जो लोग ये बोलते थे कि आप लोग बस मुट्ठी पर हो और या फिर ये आंदोलन बस पंजाब का है, या एक धर्म का ही है, या इसमें कोई ये है वो है, आई थिंक वो सब मिथ्स कल ब्रेक हो गई। और इसके लिए सब लोगों को मुबारकबाद, जितने भी लोग किसानों को प्यार करते हैं, देश को प्यार करते हैं। बिकॉज द थिंग इज इट्स नॉट कि आपको कोई क्वेश्चन है, किसी को कोई प्रॉब्लम है, बट ये है कि लोग यहाँ पे बैठे हैं तो उनको ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा सपोर्ट चाहिए, देशवासियों की सपोर्ट चाहिए। So having this rally was something important for us, and having it successfully helped was important. So going back to where things started, I came here in first week of December. यहाँ पे मेडिकल कैंप था मेरा, मेन था, मैं ये इसलिए आया था कि मेडिकल का मुझे मालूम था कोविड का टाइम है, लोगों को ज़रूरत पड़ेगी और कोविड की आउटब्रेक हो सकती है। बिकॉज आई डेल्ट विद कोविड पेशेंट्स इन अमेरिका। वहाँ पे मैंने पेशेंट्स को अपने हाथों में मरते हुए भी देखा है, पेशेंट्स को बचाया भी है। सो आई रियलाइज़ कि जहाँ पे इतनी बड़ी गैदरिंग होगी और जो बीमारी है जो फैलती है एक दूसरे से, तो वो फैल सकती है, तो वहाँ पे मेरी ज़रूरत पड़ सकती है। So I had to go. So that was the reason, that I came, and I stayed. So some of the stuff that we started doing early for COVID was हमने लोगों को बताना शुरू किया, अवेयर करना शुरू किया कि कोविड है। पहले मैं जथेबंदियों के पास भी गया था, we talked about masks, but the issue became that यहाँ पे लोग मुंह ढक के बहुत कुछ कर सकते थे। और आपको मालूम भी होगा, जनवरी 26 के पहले यहाँ पे कुछ जथेबंदियों के हेड्स को मारने की कोशिश भी हुई थी। तो देन इट वाज डिसाइडेड कि हम मास्क नहीं पहन सकते, इवन दो वी स्टिल gave out over 1 million masks. The consensus was that we will be forced not to wear a mask because बात यही हुई थी कि कोविड से हम मर सकते हैं, उसका चांस है 1-2%। लेकिन अगर कोई मास्क डाल के यहाँ पे कुछ गलत कर देता है, जहाँ हम यहाँ पे नहीं गैदर करते, हम घरों में ही रहते हैं जैसे कि सरकार बोल रही थी, तो हमारी these 3 कानून्स will kill us, make us slaves, and we will not be able to live. So better है कि चलो अगर मरना ही है तो कोविड से मर जाएंगे, we don't have a choice. So किसानों के पास चॉइस नहीं थी, so it's against their will कि उनको गैदर करना पड़ा, उनको प्रोटेस्ट करना पड़ा। जहाँ पे जथेबंदी ने बोला कि आप ये कानून वापस ले, कोविड का टाइम लिमिट है, ये आप देख लेना, आपने जो करना है वो तो तब देख लेंगे, बैठ डिसाइड कर लेंगे। सो आई थिंक कोविड टाइम वाज हॉट, और हमने तो ये बाहर काम किया है काफ़ी, हमारे जहाँ पे ऑक्सीजन की जरूरत थी वहाँ पे ऑक्सीजन खुद लेके गए, जहाँ पे पेशेंट्स को डॉक्टर्स नहीं मिल रहे थे वहाँ पे हमारी टीम जाती थी। हम रात के 9 बजे से लेकर सुबह के 3 बजे तक पेशेंट्स को देखते थे दिल्ली में, हरियाणा में, उनके घरों में जाके, जहाँ पे डॉक्टर्स नहीं पहुँच पाते थे। सो वी सॉ well over 1,000 पेशेंट्स इन दैट सेकेंड वेव, घरों में जाके लोगों के फ्री में दवाई भी दी। और जहाँ पे हमारे आंदोलन की बात है, some of the stuff we did was educating people, self-isolating people, separating people early. अगर हमारे रैंडम टेम्परेचर चेक्स किए, ऑक्सीजन चेक्स किए, जहाँ पे हमको लगता था कि कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो, वहाँ पे हमने कोविड टेस्टिंग भी की अंदर खाते वो। और लकली इस आंदोलन में कोई भी कोविड की आउटब्रेक नहीं हुई, कोविड केसेस नहीं आए। So I think it was hard work but also some luck that happened, that we escaped through the second wave untouched. और फिर बाद में हमारी कोशिश रही सरकार से मांगने की कि हमको वैक्सीन दे दो, लोगों को गाइड करने की कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग वैक्सीन लगाएं। लेकिन इश्यूज वही आते रहे कि वैक्सीन थी नहीं, लोग चाहते थे वैक्सीन लगाना, लेकिन वैक्सीन ही नहीं थी। जब अभी तक वो स्थिति चल रही है, वैक्सीन सेंटर्स के बाद ऐसी ऐसी भीड़ चलती है, लोग एक दूसरे के ऊपर चढ़े होते हैं कि जिसको शायद कोरोना ना भी हो उसको भी हो सकता है वहाँ वैक्सीन लगाते हुए। So we were thankful that the Punjab government stepped up and they gave us about 2,000 vaccines. वो वैक्सीन हमने एक हफ्ते में सारे यहाँ पे लगा दी, क्योंकि रश लगने लगा। बाद में उनसे भी हम वेट कर रहे हैं, अभी तक वापस नहीं उन्होंने दी। It's been more than a month that they've been gone. लेकिन हमको we are begging, we are begging the Indian government, Delhi government, Punjab government, every government कि हमको प्लीज़ वैक्सीन दो, वैक्सीन की ज़रूरत है। और यहाँ पे लोग इकट्ठा हुए हैं, अगर यहाँ पे आग लगेगी तो हर जगह फैलेगी। और बड़ी प्रॉब्लम ये है कि ये लोग घर नहीं जा सकते, so they're stuck. They have to protest against their will and they will protest, but I think the only thing जो हम कर सकते हैं इनके लिए कि इनको वैक्सीन दीजिए। और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा किसान लगा भी रहे हैं, लेकिन जिनको अभी चाहिए, हम सरकार से यही बेग करते हैं, क्योंकि वैक्सीन एक चीज़ है जो हम खुद नहीं खरीद पाते। हमने ट्राई किया था अमेरिका से फाइज़र की वैक्सीन लेने का, काफ़ी बातचीत भी चली, लेकिन इशू था कि इंडिया में अलाउ नहीं करते। सो आई थिंक we are begging for a vaccine because we cannot buy it ourselves. हम घर खरीद सकते हैं, दूध खरीद सकते हैं, पानी हमारे आंदोलन में लेके आ सकते हैं, सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, लेकिन वैक्सीन नहीं लेके आ सकते अपने आप। So vaccine is one thing we are asking the government. As far as other things, some of the things that we worked on, one thing was यहाँ पे गटर्स में बहुत प्रॉब्लम थी और हाइजीन प्रॉब्लम थी, उसमें गाइडेंस की। गटर्स हम खुद साफ कर रहे हैं, अभी महीने से ऊपर हो गया है हम गटर्स को क्लीन कर रहे हैं टिकरी बॉर्डर पे, क्योंकि जो गंदा पानी है गटर्स में, वहाँ से मलेरिया आता है, डेंगू आता है और कोरोना जैसी एक और बीमारी पैदा हो सकती है। तो हमने बहुत ज़्यादा प्रशासन से बेग किया कि आप लोग ये गटर साफ़ करा दो, गटर साफ़ करा दो, लेकिन उन्होंने नहीं किया। ऊपर से उन्होंने ये बोला कि आप लोग कर लो, अगर कर सकते तो कर लो। तो देन हमने खुद ही शुरू कर दिया कि अगर ये सरकार नहीं करेगी, it's our country and we should try to help in whichever way we can. तो हमारी टीम ने गटर साफ़ करना शुरू कर दिया, लेकिन इश्यूज उसमें भी आए कि गटर्स ऐसे बने हैं कि जैसे अगर पानी को इस तरफ जाना है और जो ऊंचाई है वो इस तरफ है, तो पानी जा नहीं पा रहा, पानी को ऊपर जाना पड़ रहा है टू क्लियर द गटर्स। सो उसके कारण गटर्स ब्लॉक है। ऊपर से ये बात है, गटर्स के बीच में डेड एंड है, गटर होता है बाद में जाके रुक जाता है। सो इट्स ए ह्यूज इशू कि आप जितना मर्जी उस गटर को साफ कर लीजिए, आप कर नहीं पाओगे, क्योंकि कहाँ उस गटर जब वो बनाया गया था उसमें करप्शन हुई है, और करप्शन इतने बड़े लेवल की हुई है कि गटर ही नहीं बना। और ये कला टिकरी बॉर्डर पे नहीं, हर जगह पे मुझे लगता है इंडिया में ये चीज़ चलती है कि हर एक चीज़ में करप्शन है। ये तो एक चीज़ है जिसमें हमने अनफोल्ड किया है और फाइंड किया है, लेकिन ये भी कर रहे हैं। सो हमारा होता है हेल्थ के अकॉर्डिंगली, जहाँ भी हमको लगता है हमारी ज़रूरत है वहाँ पे पहुँचते हैं, वहाँ पे काम करते हैं। भावे वो किसान रैलीज़ हों कि वहाँ पे कुछ हो ना जाए, जैसे 26 जनवरी को हमारी डॉक्टर्स की टीम को भी पीटा गया था, जब किसानों को पीटा गया, हम तो वहाँ पे सर्विस दे रहे थे यहाँ की पुलिस वालों का भी इलाज कर रहे थे, क्योंकि वहाँ पे प्रशासन की तरफ से कोई डॉक्टर नहीं था, कोई एम्बुलेंस नहीं था। तो हमारी एम्बुलेंस थी जो फट्टड़ पुलिस वालों को, CRPF वालों को भी हॉस्पिटल लेके गई, किसानों को तो लेके गई। लेकिन बड़ी बात थी कि पुलिस की तरफ से, प्रशासन की तरफ से एक भी एम्बुलेंस नहीं दी गई उस दिन, पुलिस वालों को एक भी डॉक्टर नहीं दिया गया उनको। लेकिन उनके हाथ में बड़े बड़े ग्रेनेड पकड़ा दिए गए, वो जो टीयर गैस पकड़ा दी गई। और लेकिन जब कोई पुलिस वाला इंजर्ड हो जाता था और तो उनके लिए केयर करने के लिए हम ही थे। सो आई थिंक देयर इज़ अ ह्यूज नीड फॉर डॉक्टर्स हियर and we are doing our best, and there will be a continuous need, and we always beg for other people to step up and help. So I think if you have any questions, I'll be I can take them, otherwise एक और चीज़ की मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा कि जो आप लोगों ने करनाल में देखा कि एक पुलिस वाला ने ऐसा बोला कि लोगों के सिर पे डांगे मारो, बार बार बोला, उसके कारण एक पुलिस वाला एक किसान की हत्या हो गई। तो 302 का मुकदमा होना चाहिए कि हमारे देश में इतनी भी रिस्पेक्ट नहीं है लोगों की कि आप पुलिस वाले भी ये बोलने लगे कि इनको सिर पे मार के इनको मार दो। तो आई थिंक वी एज अ पीपल हैव टू रिस्पेक्ट लाइफ की रिस्पेक्ट करना सीखिए। अमेरिका को हम फॉलो करते हैं, तो अमेरिका में अगर कोई कत्ल किया है पुलिस वाले ने, उसको 23 साल की सज़ा हुई थी डेविड चौवन को जॉर्ज फ्लॉयड के कत्ल में। तो हम भी यही रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे इंडियन सरकार से कि आप भी उम्र कैद की सज़ा होनी चाहिए उस पुलिस वाले को जिसने इनको मारा है, जिसने वो कत्ल किया किसान को। थैंक यू।
धन्यवाद स्वैमान जी। आंदोलन के बारे में विस्तृत जानकारी और जिन मुद्दों को लेकर ये किसान ने जिनसे आंदोलन से जुड़े हुए आंदोलन में हैं। आप हमारे अगले स्पीकर हैं अखिल गोवे जी। हैज ही ज्वाइन?
No, he has not yet joined. Probably he has network problem. He is traveling. Therefore, let us proceed.
Okay. Then we have discussion. Ishwar Singh Dost. Ishwar ji, now floor is yours.
जी
Now you
जी
can
जी 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 मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है?
हाँ, बिल्कुल आ रही।
हाँ हाँ। तो मैंने दोनों बहुत ही शानदार प्रस्तुतियां हमारे सामने हुई हैं और इन्होंने बहुत सारे मिथक भी तोड़े हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ों के हमको नई जानकारी दी है। तो मैं सबसे पहले एक बात लेकर आऊँगा कि दलजीत के प्रेजेंटेशन में जिसको हम राज सत्ता कहते हैं, राज्य कहते हैं, उसको और उसके पेंडेमिक के साथ में रिश्ते को बहुत अच्छे से प्रश्नांकित किया गया है। और मुझे याद है कि जो शुरू का एक सत्र था इस कोलोक्वियम का, उसमें बात हुई थी, शायद धर्मेंद्र ने और हिलाल ने दोनों ने कहा था कि राज्य दिखता भी है और जहाँ दिखना चाहिए वहाँ नहीं दिखता है, और जहाँ नहीं दिखना चाहिए वहाँ दिखता है। तो विजिबल और इनविजिबल की जो स्ट्रेटेजी राज्य फॉलो करता है। और हमको याद है कि पहले हम लोग कहा करते थे कि राज्य जो है वो सबसे बड़ा नायक भी है और सबसे बड़ा खलनायक भी है। तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि पेंडेमिक का जहां तक सवाल आता है, तो पेंडेमिक का सवाल ये आता है कि पेंडेमिक महामारी है या नहीं। अगर महामारी है तो राज्य कहाँ है? अगर हम देखें, अभी स्वैमन सिंह ने जो बात रखी कि क्या राज्य ऑक्सीजन उपलब्ध करा रहा है, क्या राज्य दवाइयाँ उपलब्ध करा रहा है, क्या राज्य बिस्तर उपलब्ध करा रहा है, तो हम देखते हैं कि अगर महामारी है तो तार्किक रूप से राज्य होना चाहिए, लेकिन राज्य नहीं है। लेकिन जब किसान आंदोलन होता है या इस तरह की कोई गैदरिंग होती है तो सवाल आ जाता है कि महामारी है। लेकिन राज्य खुद अपने व्यवहार से ये बताता है कि राज्य नहीं है। और यहाँ पर एक आंदोलन में मुझे लगता है कि एक बहुत बड़ा काम इन आंदोलनों ने किया कि जो काम राज्य का होना चाहिए और राज्य जहाँ पर नदारद है, स्टेट जहाँ पर नदारद है, उस काम को आंदोलन ने किया, उस काम को जनता ने किया। और जो एक हमारा जो हम कल्याणकारी राज्य में चिकित्सा जो है एक बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा है, बहुत बड़ा इदारा है, उस काम को इस आंदोलन ने संभाला और अपने तरीके से। और अभी जो स्वैमन सिंह बता रहे थे कि टिकरी बॉर्डर पे सिर्फ ये नहीं कि महामारी में इलाज की व्यवस्था की गई, बल्कि जो बीमारी जहां से पैदा हो रही है उसका भी आंदोलन ने, किसान आंदोलन ने उसको भी संबोधित किया, उस बात को भी उठाया और गटर जो है वो साफ करने का काम किया। और अगर इसको थोड़ा सा हम मेटाफोरिकली कहें, जो स्वैमन सिंह ने इशारा भी किया कि गटर है और वो गटर सिर्फ गंदगी की गटर नहीं है, वो भ्रष्टाचार की गटर भी है। और आंदोलन जो है वो दोनों गटर को साफ करने की कोशिश कर रहा है, भ्रष्टाचार के गटर को भी साफ करने की कोशिश कर रहा है। तो इसी के साथ में दलजीत ने जो एक दूसरी बहुत बड़ी बात की कि अगर आज, और दलजीत ने बहुत ही अच्छा एक उसका बैकग्राउंड भी बनाया जो CAA के आंदोलन से है, से साथ में जोड़ते हुए क्योंकि नागरिकता का नकार वहाँ उन कानूनों में भी था और नागरिकता का नकार इन कानूनों में भी है। और ये इस बात से अभिव्यक्त होता है, जिसको दलजीत ने बहुत ही अच्छे ढंग से सामने रखा, कि अगर कानून लागू होंगे तो हम वैसे भी मारे जाएंगे। तो ये हमारे जीवन और मृत्यु का सवाल है। इसलिए यहाँ पर जो है एक बहुत ही दिलचस्प एक बात आती है दलजीत के प्रेजेंटेशन से, कि महामारी जितनी खतरनाक है उतना खतरनाक अगर कभी कोई राज्य हो जाए तो शायद दोनों के खिलाफ में टकराना होगा, और उसमें ये नहीं होगा कि इससे पहले निपटेंगे और उससे बाद में निपटेंगे, दोनों से एक साथ निपटना होगा। और किसान आंदोलन ने इन दोनों चीज़ों से एक साथ निपटने की उसको कोशिश की। दूसरी बात दोनों ही प्रेजेंटेशन से एक बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से जो आई, जो दलजीत ने कहा कि दिल्ली के जो फिल्टर और जो लेंसेज हैं, आमतौर पे कई हम लोग जब किसान और मजदूर की बात करते हैं तो हम वर्गीय बात करते हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर एक बहुत बड़ी फांक जो है, दिल्ली राजधानी है और सिर्फ राजधानी नहीं है, यहाँ पर शहर और गांव जो हैं उसका जो विभाजन है, और जो हमारे मीडिया की शहर केंद्रिकता है यानी नगर केंद्रिकता है, और यहाँ पर सिर्फ मीडिया, अगर अल्थुसे के उसको हम, जिसको वो आइडियोलॉजिकल स्टेट अपरेटस बोलते थे, विचारधारात्मक राज जो संरचनाएं हैं, उसमें सिर्फ मीडिया नहीं है, वो ताली ठोको भीड़ भी उस आइडियोलॉजिकल स्टेट अपरेटस का हिस्सा बन गई है। यानी एक शहरी आबादी और उसके जनमत को, उसके विमर्श को जिस तरीके से बनाया जाता है और उस फिल्टर को वो जिस तरीके से आसानी से मंजूर कर लेती है। और यहाँ पर एक जो उन्होंने बात की कपड़ों से पहचान वाली, जो दलजीत ने उठाई, वो बहुत ही संवेदनशील बात है। और कि पगड़ी से पहचान की, और दलजीत ने बहुत अच्छे ढंग से रखा कि किस तरीके से किसान आंदोलन के पहले से जो पंजाब में anti-CAA जो आंदोलन हो रहे थे, उसका चरित्र कितना जनतांत्रिक था, लेकिन पंजाब को एक खास एंगल से देखने की कोशिश जो है वो तथाकथित राष्ट्रवादी मीडिया करता है, और जिसको वो आइडियोलॉजिकल अपरेटस में उस आबादी को भी वो शामिल कर रहे थे दलजीत, वो लोग भी करते हैं। एक और बात जो है यहाँ पर बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग जो उभरी, और मैं दलजीत के लिए उसको एक सवाल के रूप में भी रखना चाहूँगा, माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स की बात आई। लेकिन अगर हम आज किसानी की हकीकत को जानते हैं, इवन यहाँ तक कि हरियाणा और पंजाब में जहाँ किसानी थोड़ी बेहतर है, और दलजीत ने मालवा के इलाके के बारे में बताया जहाँ गन्ने का इलाका है, लेकिन वहाँ भी, और अगर हम उत्तर प्रदेश, बिहार, मध्य प्रदेश, छत्तीसगढ़ को शामिल कर दें तो और भी ज़्यादा, जो असल में हम जिसको माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स कहते हैं, जिसको हम प्रवासी मजदूर कहते हैं, उसको हम प्रवासी किसान क्यों नहीं कह सकते? क्योंकि जब किसानी जो है, क्योंकि अब देखिए गाँव में जो है किसान जो है, फार्मर तो कोई एक क्लास है नहीं, पीजेंट एक क्लास है। फार्मर कहने से कुछ भी पता नहीं चलता, फार्मर तो एक कैपिटलिस्टिक फार्मर भी हो सकता है। लेकिन जबकि जिसको हम किसानी कहते हैं, वो आज उस मोड़ पे है कि मोटे तौर पर आज दो तरह के कैटेगरीज हमको मिलती है। एक जो है किसान है, लेकिन वो जरूरत पड़ने पे मजदूरी करने के लिए मजबूर होता है, उसको हम किसान मजदूर कह सकते हैं। वो किसान भी है लेकिन वो मजदूर भी है। दूसरा मजदूर किसान है कि जो भूमिहीन है, खेत मजदूर है, लेकिन जो है वो जीने के लिए अध बटाई पे अपनी फसल लेता है, उसको तो पहले को हम किसान मजदूर कह सकते हैं, दूसरे को मजदूर किसान कह सकते हैं। तो ये एक अनुभव जो है, हमारा जो ग्रास रूट एक्सपीरियंस है, वो एक नई कैटेगरी की तरफ इशारा कर रहा है। तो ये माइग्रेंट वर्कर जो है, और मुझे जहाँ तक मुझे याद है, दलजीत से भी कभी मेरी बात हुई थी कि पंजाब का किसान आंदोलन की एक बहुत बड़ी खासियत ये थी, एक बहुत बड़ी विशेषता ये थी कि सिर्फ उसमें जो बाकायदा जो किसान ही नहीं, बल्कि जो खेत मजदूर हैं या जो सीमांत किसान हैं, जो आधे किसान हैं और आधे मजदूर हैं, वो भी बड़ी संख्या में शामिल हुए। और आखिरी बात जो मैं फिर दलजीत के प्रेजेंटेशन पे जाऊंगा। बहुत ही खूबसूरती के साथ में दलजीत ने एक बहुत किसानी से संबंधित और किसान प्रतिरोध से संबंधित एक बहुत बड़ी वैचारिक बात को सामने रखा है। वो बात है मॉरल कैपिटल की। दलजीत ने हमको बताया कि किस तरीके से पंजाब में एंटी CAA मूवमेंट के दौरान जो मॉरल कैपिटल जो हासिल की गई और उसके बाद में माइग्रेंट वर्कर के लिए लंगर लगा के उनको तमाम तरह की सहायता दे के वो हासिल की गई। और तीसरे स्तर पर जबकि पंजाब सरकार यानी कांग्रेस और शिरोमणि अकाली दल शुरू में दोनों ही किसान आंदोलन के साथ या उसके साथ नहीं थे, लेकिन किसान यूनियन ने उनको मजबूर किया अपने एजेंडे के इर्द गिर्द आने के लिए। तो यहाँ पर बस मैं जोड़ना चाहता हूँ कि जो मॉरल कैपिटल जो है, नैतिक पूंजी है, आज की जो व्यवस्था है, आज की जो औद्योगिक व्यवस्था है और जो जिसको हम लोग नव उदारवादी न्यू लिबरल जो कैपिटलिज्म है, वहाँ पर किसानी जो है वो एक हारा हुआ जो है किसानी जो है वो इस जिसको हम लोग राजनीतिक अर्थव्यवस्था कहते हैं, पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी कहते हैं, पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी में किसान हार चुका है। वो एक छोटा किसान बहुत आसानी के साथ में छोटा मजदूर बनने के लिए अगर उसको कहीं मजदूरी की बाकायदा पगार मिल रही है तो वो तैयार होता है। तो पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी के खिलाफ में आज किसान के पास में मॉरल इकोनॉमी का एक लॉजिक है और उस मॉरल इकोनॉमी के लॉजिक को कि उसकी लेजिटिमेसी इस व्यवस्था में नहीं है। और माफ करें कि सिर्फ पूंजीवादी व्यवस्था में नहीं, समाजवाद के सपने में भी मजदूर है, किसान नहीं है। पीजेंट जिसको हम कहते थे वो नहीं है। तो किसान तो अपनी मॉरल कैपिटल लेकर आया है आंदोलन में और मॉरल इकोनॉमी उसके पास में है, उसके सहारे वो लड़ रहा है। इतनी ही बात कह के मैं अपनी बात खत्म करूंगा। शुक्रिया।
Thank you, Ishwar Singh Dost, for taking maximum out of 2 presentations. ईश्वर जी ने कई महत्वपूर्ण सवाल उठाए हैं, आंदोलन से भी संबंध रखता है और ग्लोबल कैपिटलिज्म जिसके बारे में पिछले 2 दिनों से चर्चा चल रही है क्रिएटिव थ्योरी में, उससे भी संबंध रखता है। और एक सबसे महत्वपूर्ण चीज़ उन्होंने कहा, जो किसान हैं, जो फार्मर्स हैं, उनके लिए सही शब्द फार्मर्स है या नहीं, ये इस पे एक हमें सोचना चाहिए। क्योंकि आज के तारीख में जिनको हम किसान कहते थे, मुझे याद है 80 और 90 के दशक, 90 ने 80 का दशक, किसान का मतलब होता था भारत का शोषक वर्ग। और जब महेंद्र सिंह टिके तो उनका BKU दिल्ली में धावा देता था इंडिया गेट पे, तो हमारे जो बुद्धिजीवी हैं वो मानते थे जो भारत का शासक वर्ग आके दिल्ली में धावा दे दिया है। तो किसानों के बारे में ऐसी धारणा रही है और उन्होंने सही कहा, जो समाजवादी जो चिंतन है या इमेजिनेशन है उसमें भी किसान का क्या होगा स्थान, उस पर कोई महत्वपूर्ण चिंतन बहस तो काफ़ी हुई। यदि रूस के भीतर देखा जाए, सोवियत यूनियन में तो काफ़ी ज़बरदस्त बहस रही है, लेकिन उनका क्या भविष्य होगा इसको लेकर के कोई खास स्थान नहीं बन पाया समाजवादी इमेजिनेशन, सोशलिस्ट इमेजिनेशन। तो बहुत सारे सवाल आए हैं ईश्वर जी के इंटरवेंशन के बाद। नाउ आई ओपन द स्क्रीन फॉर डिस्कशन. I can't open the floor, I can only open the screen for discussion. So all of you please.
Sir, there is a question on the chat box. I will read that out.
In fact, Survesh, if it is on chat box, perhaps you'll have to read it. Otherwise,
yes, sir.
Those who are sitting here can ask questions. We have still some time for discussion. So please.
This question is from Aparmita Mishra. Can you please give some insight about the association of women in this movement? The question is for Mr. Daljit.
Okay.
Ram has raised his hand. Ram, can you?
Yes, Ram Murthy Sharma has raised the hand, and this Aparajita Mishra's question has already been read out by Survesh. So
unmute करना.
I don't know whether Ramurthy Sharma's question is for
Uh,
Daljit Ami.
Ram, you are there. You can
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Yeah,
Am I audible?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. First and foremost, very many congratulations, Daljit, for this brilliant narrative about which we were not familiar about many of those aspects. My question is straightway one, in fact, but I wanted to ask already has been asked by Amrita Mishra ji, Apranita Mishra ji, which I'm sure you are going to respond. Second bit, in fact, now I am asking two questions to you. One is that we know that there are 30 plus organizations from Punjab itself which are participating in this movement very immensely. Do you see ideological contradiction in then in context of their articulation of the basic demands related to these formula? If there are, how they are resolving those contradictions? One is that, and secondly, we understand that even it is quite clear from your narrative that it was something that in Punjab identified with as part of crisis was identified very clearly. Why do you think that other parts could not identify that crisis, which is coming upon peasantry in various manner, and their response was not as vocal as we saw in Punjab? It's the second question. And third one is that basically, as you referred about citizenship law movement in Punjab, and you gave some context, particularly about previous partition experience. And just I wanted to ask you, was there something else also which lead to the that massive mobilization in Punjab, by which they were so conscious that even they went up to Delhi? And you are right that even I couldn't recall even channel like NDTV could give a due coverage to participation of Punjab in CA and CR movement. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, should I go
Yeah,
ahead?
why not?
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Ram, Aparamita Mishra, and Ishwar. So there are lots of questions. So and there are some overlapping responses to that. So I have listed those questions. So I'll respond, and thereafter we'll think if there is something left. So first I'll start with Aparamita Mishra's question about the participation of women in the movement. The participation of women is there right from the beginning. As I have mentioned in my presentation, so that the movement started from the rooftop, and that is the easiest possible space for women to participate in a protest. So right from the word go, the women participation was there, and then there is a context of women participation in this. So the largest organization involved in the protest is BKU Ugraha, which is called BKU Ekta Ugraha. And then there is another big organization, its name is Kirti Kisan Union. Then there is BKU Dekonda. So these are three organizations, and in addition to that, there are Kisan Sabhas of CPI and CPIM, AIKMS, and another organization. So these organizations have women members in them. So wherever they mobilize any kind of protests, you'll see that the women participation is there. And then coming back to BKU Ugraha Ekta. So it was it was 2008 and 9, they decided to have a separate wing for women. So they organized that wing, and they have the largest women members in their organization. And the president of that wing is Harinder Kaur Bindu. So they have mobilized huge number of women who are there in Delhi and who are there in most of the protest sites in Punjab. So you might be interested in knowing that there are more than 100 protest sites. When I say, I mean 100 plus. It is not some metaphorical figure. So it may be 103 or 4 or 7, as we get those details on every day in the press notes. So there are more than 100 protest sites in Punjab. So those protest sites are there for more than 1 year. So as these are the protest sites which started this protest right in the first phase. So they continue to occupy those sites. So the women participation is there. And in addition to that, there was spontaneous response to this movement, which brought many women from different walks of life, whether they were journalists or women who are professionals. There are women who were working as staff nurses or working as teachers. So they went there to participate in the movement, and they played their role. I can cite an example. I met a woman at a protest site in Delhi. I asked her that uh, what is her experience. So she told me that this is the third time when she is here at the protest site. So first she came as part of a farmer union. So she was there. It was her duty to stay there for 7 days. So then she is part of Asha Workers Union. So then the Asha Worker Union sent her again for a week, which was uh, as an activist of Asha Worker. And the third time, the village panchayat has passed a resolution that every house need to send a person to the protest site. So then third time she was there as a villager representing the village. So you'll find that kind of experience is there. So and then this protest has done something remarkable vis-a-vis the issue of women. So it has brought very many women from Haryana to the protest site. So you can see that number, that strength in the gathering of whether it is 8th March or the Farmers' Days celebrated at protest sites. So that's there. So I assume that the 8th March gathering may be the largest ever gathering in India on International Women Day of women. So I couldn't gather any information where more than that number of women gathered to mark 8th March. So that's there. Then there is a protest site in Tikri. It's called Pakoda Chowk. Pakoda Chowk, it has a protest site where BKU Ograha has its stage. So they do their daily public meeting at Pakoda Chowk in that grain market. Tuesday is the day when only women speaker speak. No male speakers speak on Tuesday unless or until there is something big to be announced or someone need to make a statement, someone, whether it is the president or the secretary or some other leader. But mostly you'll find that right from the morning till the end, it's the women speakers only. So if you want to learn the complicated ideas of the protest side, linking kitchen to the IMF policies, and that too in different dialects of Punjabi, that is the best possible space. You can learn Punjabi as well as the complicated ideas articulated in a dialect. So most of the time, these spaces and these articulations remain unrepresented in the mainstream media, not just of Delhi, even of Punjab. As even Punjabi, we are very parochial about dialects. So whosoever is speaking in a particular kind of dialect, which we the educated assume that this is the language of illiterates, we tend to ignore. We don't listen to that. So but something remarkable is happening there, and it is going to change the politics of Punjab and Haryana as far as women is concerned forever. And I'm very confident about it. And that's my point about the women. Then Ishwar raised the question of migrant workers, and then the further categorization of Kisan Mazdoor or Mazdoor Kisan. Mm, uh, so while making that point, Ishwar mentioned that Malwa belt is a sugarcane belt. Ishwar, Malwa is not the sugarcane belt. The sugarcane belt is parts of Doaba and Majha. So mostly around Beas and Ravi rivers, we have the sugarcane belts. Malwa is primarily wheat paddy belt, and then there is 4 or 5 districts which are called cotton belt. So the big organizations are working in this area, as this area has a kind of crop pattern which is in the large chunk of land. So the organizations are big. So the organizations which are working in Doaba and in Majha, they are confined to particular kind of sugar mills. So somebody is going to Sanewal sugar mill. So the people who are taking the sugar cane to that mill will be part of that union. So that is there. So just if a minor factual correction, otherwise it doesn't make any impact on the argument you made. The argument stands as it is. So as far as Mazdoor Kisan issue is concerned, it has been discussed with reference of this agitation and even otherwise too. So making this agitation inclusive space and inclusive agitation was one of the major concerns of most of the organizations, which they have tried their level best to make it inclusive. It's a separate issue, and it demands a serious interrogation whether it is inclusive or it is not, to what extent it is inclusive, and what are the bottlenecks and what are the issues, whether they are caste issues or it is just an economics which make people occupy the roads for so long. So these are, I think, questions which we need to engage with. So coming back to the migrant workers. So whenever there is discussion about farm workers in Punjab, there are organizations which stated categorically that we don't call them labor. They are landless farmers. In Punjabi, they call it Bejamine Kisan. So they, that is one of the things I think we need to further explore it, that what goes into this kind of articulation, what made them, what is the experience behind coining of this term, and do it make some impact on the ideological position or on their strategy, that is yet to be seen. So, but an important aspect about the engagement of these unions with the migrant labor, so that association can't be confined to Punjab or to the corona relief system. If you studies the protest site in Delhi, you will find the role of migrant workers over there, as at these two protest sites where Punjabis and Haryanvis are sitting. One is at Singhu, which is National Highway 44, coming from Amritsar, Ludhiana, Jalandhar, and entering into Delhi, and the other is the Tikri border, where people from Rohtak, Hisar, and Malwa belt of Punjab go and enter from that side to Delhi. So that is Tikri. So both these protest sites are in industrial areas, and the locals around them are industrial workers and some small business people, and then so they have supported this agitation really well, and that is one of the aspect which I couldn't understand, that why media ignored it, whether it is pro agitation media or it is anti agitation media. They have ignored the role of migrant workers who are settled in Tikri and at other place. So let me just qualify my statement, that what kind of role they have played. So when you take huge number of protesters who need to settle at a site, you need to have particular kind of arrangements. For example, the toilets are very important need for any kind of habitation. So the people in Singhu, at Tikri, they handed over the keys of their offices, their shops, of their homes to the protesters who are using their washrooms and toilets day in, day out. I think that is something really big. And then They are letting them use their spaces where they can use their washing machines and so on. So this is a kind of organic relation between migrant workers and the protesters who are there. So I have done a series of reports on that. If you are interested, you can go to my YouTube channel Abbas Sahafi and watch those reports, where I have done a report about waste flows of the protest, where I have talked about toilets, and then the kind of difficulties those locals are subjected to. The government has put on big boulders in the streets, where the people who use those streets find their mobility curtailed like anything. They can't move in those streets. And some of the streets are dependent on water canters, where water canter come every day and they fill their tanks for daily use of the water. So the canters are finding it difficult. So despite all kind of difficulties, despite loss of employment, they are having sympathies towards this protest. This is something really big. I think not just the political scientists, the psychologists, psychiatrists, and sociologists need to go deeper into that, and they need to understand it in detail what is happening over there. So it is not very simple. It's complex, but whatever is it is, it is really remarkable. I'm just finishing in a minute.
There are a few more questions for you. In fact, Anjali Dalal is raising her hand.
Okay, just let me finish. I'm just about to finish. So then Ishwar raised that question of moral capital. So I'll just draw a line from 26th of January to the Muzaffarnagar rally, which Swaiman Singh have mentioned it in. So before 26th, there was huge inside right wing from Punjab, which was asserting it very well, vociferously, and they were saying it again and again that this is a Sikh agitation. So they are asserting the identity that this is a Sikh agitation. So despite it being a really difficult question to handle with, the farmer organizations handled it really well, and they stood against the pressure they were under, from whether it was from Punjab or from Haryana or from diaspora or from very many Sikhs. As you, I think I don't need to go into detail that we have right-wing organizations at different places. When I am saying right-wing organizations, I am not just mentioning it to the Hindu right-wing, as most of the time it is assumed that Hindu right-wing is the right-wing people are confronting. There is diversity of right-wing. So when I say right-wing in context of Punjab, I means not Hindu right-wing. It's the Sikh right-wing. So at that time, the BJP tried its level best to make it a Sikh agitation, and the right-wingers from Punjab, they tried their level best to make it a Sikh agitation. So it is a different kind of pressure coming from all together. It is coming from inside and it is coming from outside. It is coming from enemy and it is coming from friend. That's a really difficult situation. In that situation, some of the farmer organizations took it head on. Some of the farmer organization tried to just duck it and bypass it, but in the end what happened is they have done some remarkable work. So if we draw a line from 26 January to the rally in Muzaffarnagar, where Rakesh Tikait is asserting that we are going to raise the old slogan, that is Har Har Mahadev Allahu Akbar, and going to that kind of secular slogans. It is a remarkable trajectory, and this is the phase from 26 January to this Muzaffarnagar rally, where the farmer agitation recovered the moral strength of being secular. I think this is something I want to mention it here. And then Ram raised two questions. One of the question is the ideological contradiction between the organizations who are participating. Ram, it's very clear that there are sharp ideological contradictions. So there are organizations, come what may, they will not support labor's cause in any situation. So there are organizations who will go to any extent and will be ready to pay any price, but they will support the labor in the agitations. And then there are different kind of tension. Some of the organizations, their leaders are interested in contesting elections, so they are trying to uh, mm, uh, assert within different political parties. So they have their agendas, but there it is definitely there. The tension is definitely there. Different kind of tensions. Caste tension is there. Class tension is definitely there. So in these kind of tensions, the only thing which is making them united, which is really remarkable, which we need to understand, is that they put pressure on each other, and it is through that pressure that they are united on just one point, and that one point is that repeal these three laws. There is no other uniting force. There is no other ideological common point that they have. Let it be very clear. So we can, I think this is a bigger question. It can be discussed in detail. I can take very many long times, but I'll conclude it here. Then why the other states couldn't identify? I'm not very well versed with rest of the Indian states, but the issue with Punjab is that Punjab had very well organized Kisan unions, and then Punjab has fought important uh, battles against SEZ policies, where there were some lands were acquired, and they fought against it. So they got compensation for the land already acquired. Punjab has the president where they made government pay compensation to the landless people when the land was acquired. So that was definitely there. That experience is there when people are told that your lands are going to be purchased, you are going to be landless. So that ideological training was definitely there, and that training plus the organizational skill they have, it became handy. So I think that is the only positive point. And then Punjab is one of the bigger beneficiaries of that kind of marketing. Punjab is hugely dependent on this APMC markets. So all these factors contribute to it. And although Haryana too and is dependent on APMC markets, but Haryana has huge industrial base, but they don't have the organized Kisan unions. But now the situation is going to change. Haryana is going to change forever. The equation between Haryana and Punjab is going to change forever. So these are the important. So now, if there are any questions,
Yeah.
I'm happy to respond.
Thank you. In fact, Anjali Dalal is raising her hand. But before I ask her to put a question, just I'm reminded of this issue of women's participation in this movement came up. In fact, this time we have dedicated our creative theory colloquium to in the memory of Gail Ombe, and I was reminded of her because I remember in 80s when she decided to join Satkari Sangathan led by Sarah Joshi, because largely on account of that movement taking up women's issues in a big way. And later on, she worked closely with Satkari Sangathan along with the farmers' issues. So I mean, she tried to harmonize the two things, the plight and miseries of the middle and small peasants in villages, as well as the women's question with which she was working very closely for decades. So I mean, that way, in fact, I was reminded of Gail Omber, whose memory you have dedicated this creative story colloquium this year. Yes, Anjali Dalal, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Satish ji. I think Daljit ji has already answered most of my questions which I wanted to ask, and it was very elaborative and interesting. I just had this question in mind that how far the movement has been thoroughly criticized of being very dominant with big farmers. I mean, the protests and these even from the starting till the ending of the movement, not the ending, but till now, big farmers of Punjab and Haryana have been appropriating the major stage of the movement? And how far do you think the small scale farmers or the Dalit laborers who might be still working on their fields when they are protesting on the ground, how far do you think this movement is also about those sections of the society? So I just wanted to ask you, like being an insider as well as an outsider, as you said, your positionality is very prominent in that stage to answer about how do you think these segments of movements and these various organizations have have are able to like answer for those sections which have not been well represented in the movement. But you already answered this saying that there has been tension based on caste, class, and women issues already in this movement, and that is why all these organization within this larger movement is like collaborating only on one point to repeal all the laws. So yeah, I think you answered that question, but still I think this tension was more important right now on how to collaborate the big farmers with these small and marginalized sections who are left out from the movement.
Let's take a few more questions, and then, in fact, you can respond, or Swaiman Singh will respond. May I request Professor Manoranjan Mahanti to make some observations and comments on the presentations and overall this farmers movement and
No.
future.
I think those were excellent.
Sir, please.
No. Okay, two very brief questions. I think both we can address. One is indeed repeal of the three laws issue has united all the forces, but they are all raising fundamental systemic and development path related questions. And several movements have taken place all over the country as an extension of the farmers movement. And you people, and especially Pratap and others, have gone to different parts of the country addressing meetings. Therefore, what prospects are there of more integrated anti-system force being generated as a result of this movement? That's one. The other is that it has been said that the state has deployed, and the ruling party, particularly the ruling party, has deployed a dual strategy. Parts of it, its leaders and cadres are negotiating and informally, and then and also the local governments are being asked to tolerate and don't be too repressive, etc., etc. Whereas the government is absolutely determined not to relent. Now, is this strategy, and from your analysis, it's clear that the movement is quite aware of the strategy of government. But do you think this strategy and this kind of situation is likely to continue? Because I consider this farmers movement as independent India's one of the most significant people's movements and political events, political processes. And no matter what consequence in terms of repeal of laws it may have, it will have long-term influence on the nature of the evolution of Indian political system. And that because the parties which are nowhere at the center, but are learning a lot from this movement, they cannot ignore, but nor can they have a space in this movement. So this new situation of relationship between an independent force, that is the farmers movement, and the party system in India has created an unprecedented situation, very different from the JP movement kind of thing. And therefore, does it have prospects for evolution of the Indian political system in certain ways?
Thank you, sir. Yes, we can take one or two more questions and comments, and then I think that I'll request Daljit ji to respond. Yes, anyone else? Yes, Maninda. Yes, please go ahead.
I was just wondering that farmers' movement probably has not been able to get equal amount of support in the Hindi heartland. In the Hindi heartland, I mean to say basically Bihar and Madhya Pradesh. Bihar particularly. I was just wondering, Bihar's farmers' condition is very bad. This minimum support price has been drawn long back. And there is no support except that, in fact, the Chief Minister keeps boasting that one part of Bihar, that is the northern part of Bihar, has used maize production, which is almost parallel to anywhere in the world. But yet they have no support, neither in terms of marketing nor in terms of input, needed input. Despite all this, why the Bihar farmers did not stand up in support of this movement? Even now they are not standing up. So how do you explain that? Is there any effort on the behalf of farmers movement to garner support from other parts of the country?
Vidyut has a question.
Yes.
I just wanted
Yes,
to,
madam.
I just wanted to know if the female farmers have any role during this COVID. So anybody can reply.
Okay, Daljit ji, now you can respond.
I couldn't get that last question. If anybody can repeat, I'll appreciate that help.
I just wanted to know if the role in movement.
There's some audio.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
Yeah, some audio problem.
So I assume that question is about role of women in the movement.
Yeah.
Is that right, ma'am? This is what you are asking. I think she can't hear me.
So audio problem. She may be fixing it later. Yeah.
So I'll respond to this assumed question unless or until somebody else can help me understand it better. So I'll start with Anjali Dalal's question. So first off, her question was already responded. So she has asked me about the role of small farmers and marginal farmer in the protest. And most of the time, the discussion around this protest is the ideas are coming out of solidarities, or at sometimes they are coming from nowhere. We just need to go and we need to have some kind of data to make this kind of assessments. Who are the people who are sitting there, what kind of holdings they have, what kind of farming they are involved in. So if I want to conclude it, so Punjab as a whole, so it is a kind of sample of Punjab which is there at the protest site. So this I'm talking about when we were in December last week or January last week, and thereafter there is a kind of distillation phase where most of the people who are there out of solidarity or people who consider that there is a festival going on and we should be part of that festival, whether it is a festival of resistance or it is a festival of solidarity, or it's a festival of some religious congregation. So that festive atmosphere was definitely there. In that festive atmosphere, the people who are affluent, they contribute to make it a spectacle, whether it is uh, whatever imagery we were watching on the media. So most of the imagery come from that affluent section. But if you go to the protest site right now, so where the number is really thin, but the kind of determination and the resolute and the sedateness of the agitation, it's very much there. And then you study who are the people who are sitting there. So my understanding about this agitation and about the cadre of the organization is that it is a movement of small and marginal farmers, whereas there was a big attempt by the big farmers to capture it. So they tried their level best to establish their dominance, which they have failed over the period of time. I think that is one of the achievement of this agitation. So when we talk about the small farmer and big farmers, so as far as the sugarcane belt is concerned, they have comparatively bigger land holdings. If we come into the cotton belt, where we are seeing most of the suicides in Punjab. So just to give you a context, uh, uh, Punjab government got a suicide census done in the state through 3 different universities: Punjabi University, Patiala, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and Punjab Agriculture University, Ludhiana. So they came with a census which says that 16,606 people have committed suicides from 2000 to 2015. So in these 15 years, so there is more than 1,000 suicide every year. So there are more than 6,000 people who are farm workers and rest of them are farmers. So most of the organizations which are huge, which have big sport bases, which have mobilized more people for the protest site, so they come from that particular area. So this is definitely a movement of small and marginal farmers. So you will find people who are sitting at the protest site for last 9 months, for 8 months. There are people who are saying that we have not visited our village even once since the agitation started. You will not find even a single big farmer who can claim that they are sitting on the protest site for so many days without any break. So it is definitely, I think still we need to study this part to make us comprehend who are the people. So as even the big farmers are going to lose if these laws are implemented, but still I say that this is a movement of small and marginal farmers. So as as far as the coverage, the analysis of this agitation is concerned, it is very much spectacle oriented coverage and the analysis which we see in on TV or on newspapers. So those spectacles are whether it is 26th January or the people marching from Punjab to the borders with the tractors and machines. That is a spectacle. And then Muzaffarnagar is another spectacle. So if we want to go into detailed, we need to go beyond those spectacles. I think that is the job which social scientists need to do. That is one thing. Then one more thing which I noted is when Mahinda Thakur is talking about that why Bihar and rest of the Indian states are not responding in the same fashion as Punjab and Haryana are responding. I think I'm not in a position to respond to that question, but still that is one of the question which invites me, which I have interest in. So there are certain ideas which I think can help us to move forward. So I think when we will talk about this agitation should also be talked about with reference of big machines, tractors, trolleys. So they were the most important things or the material at the protest site. So the tractors, when it comes to tractors, people from Haryana and Punjab, they are the best drivers. Army and police can't beat them. So they have a upper hand when they are on a tractor. That machine need to be discussed. The role of that machine need to be discussed. When you are housed in a trolley, no police officer will let his cops attack that space, as the person in the trolley is in a bunker. So we need to study that trolley as a bunker too. It is not as simple as that. I think these ideas may sound weird, but the machine facilitated these peoples to reach the protest site and then remain over there to keep that protest site occupied. From now onward, it will be big questions that what will happen to the protests of those people who don't have machine. What will happen to the protests of those people who don't have the capacity to sit for that long? How will the state respond to those people vis-a-vis the state has responded to these people? And then the last point which I want to make is, so the caste is a very important factor. It is yet to be studied, but one thing is very clear. One of my colleagues, I was working in BBC, he used to say that, look, come what may, but this agitation is of Jats. From Almora to Attak. I know that Attak is not in India, it's in Pakistan. But the Jats, whether they are Hindus, whether they are Sikhs, or they are Muslims, it's a kind of tribalism. They associate with each other. It doesn't matter whether they are on the protest site or not. It doesn't matter whether they are in Punjab or they are in California. They are supporting it. They are contributing to it. There was a huge response in Pakistan. You can find people on social media, people singing songs in this support. So that is not a state propaganda. That is a Jat solidarity. I think this formulation of mine may be very provocative, but this is one of the things we need to delve deeper into. Yeah, that's it. I'm not an academician, so I can take the liberty of making such provocative statements and let the academicians respond to this. Thank you very much.
Sir, you're on mute. Satish, sir.
About women farmers.
Thank you, Daljit ji. How much time we are left?
Sir,
I
12 more
thank you.
minutes.
Huh?
The last question about the women farmers.
12 more minutes, sir. We can take one more question.
One
Yeah.
more.
Women
Okay, but
Yeah.
you can respond to the question.
Yeah.
that he missed out.
Yeah, as far as the agriculture operation is concerned, the women farmers are more involved in Haryana. They are comparatively less involved in the farm activity in Punjab. But it doesn't mean that they are outside the farm activity. So they are more into dairy, which is not in the farm. And then keeping the people who are in the farm in good shape, keeping the people in a working shape outside is also part of the agriculture operation. So that way, the involvement of women is very much there, whether it is Punjab or it is Haryana. But as far as the activist space is concerned, that space has increased in this agitation. And the assertion of women has increased. And the kind of issues people are taking within organization, whether it is sexual harassment or it is the role of women in the decision-making bodies, it's definitely there. we will very soon find organic leaders going to the top. If they are not on the top, they are making the top take particular kind of decision. Let me assure you that it is happening. Women leaders are in a situation that they can't be taken for granted by their male counterparts. They are very assertive, and very soon we will find them on the top, in the top leaderships. So right now the issue is that most of the women leaders, they are not coming from urban spaces or university spaces. And this agitation has come to Delhi without being mediated by the university and journalism spaces. So the uncomfort of our universities with the women leadership is definitely there. So once they will realize that even these women who don't speak English, who don't take advice from the professoriate or the secretariat, they too need to be understood. You will not find even a single big piece about Harinder Kaur Bindu. She is a big leader. Rather, she is the leader. She can't be ignored by her organization. And if you get a chance to travel with her for a day, let me assure you that you will say, Daljit ne thoda kam bataya tha. Ye usse zyada badi leader hai. So there are very many leaders who are very confident, and they are very assertive, and they are taking decisions. So sooner or later, this professoriate will find them, this journalistic circles will find them. They will be forced to write big pieces about them. They'll be forced to write profiles about them. So who are the people we have found profiles in the mainstream media? Most of the people who are people like us, professoriates, journalists. So they got the, so I'm from Punjab University, Chandigarh. I have studied here. So most of the student activists who were there as supporters of the agitation, they were being profiled by the mainstream media. Why? They speak English. They are people like us. So they were being projected by the mainstream media as the people who are playing the instrumental role. भैया उनको यूनिवर्सिटी से बाहर कोई नहीं पूछता है. They are good people. They are supporting this agitation, but they are not the leaders. So जो इस मोमेंट के लीडर्स हैं, वो इन स्पेसेस से सर्टिफिकेट लेकर नहीं आएंगे और वो बैठ जाएंगे, और औरतें बैठ जाएंगी, जाने वाली नहीं है. जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच.
कहने का मतलब आंदोलन जीवी नहीं, आंदोलनकारी ही इसके मुख्य स्तंभ है आंदोलन के.
I have a question.
Anyway, we can take one or two more questions, but provided they are brief and short.
Why do women, girl child has a less value in Punjab and Haryana, whereas in Odisha, girl child had more value and she has longer life to live? Why it is so? If there are women leaders.
The question is for you. Yes.
Yeah, this is a really complex question. I think there is, let's say that this is a masculine patriarchal society where male preference is there.
Yes.
And it's not going to fade out overnight. And it doesn't have any instrumental connection with the woman leadership over there. Right. I think that
this is the point.
So, but this woman leadership will make not just their organizations or the cadres think, they will make the society think about it. And this is a way to deal with the question, although there is no instrumental connection between their position and the position of women in the society itself.
This is very important because I remember in 1988 when Mahendra Singh Tikait had come to Delhi and captured India Gate. When he was interviewed on women's issues, number of things which he said didn't go down well with many feminist organizations at that time. So in fact, in 70s and 80s, farmers movement, particularly in Western UP, I'm not aware about Punjab, but I'm sure the situation was not much different in Punjab also. On this issue, women's issue, the gender issues, it didn't have very progressive views. Unlike perhaps to some extent, Saraj Joshi and Satkari Sangathan tried to moderate its position on number of issues, including the women's issues in Maharashtra. That's why many feminist organizations joined hands with Saraj Joshi in Maharashtra. But that was not the case with DKU in Western UP, in Haryana, and Punjab. But what you are saying now, and the kind of organic leadership emerging from this movement and going up to the top, that basically gives a lot of hope, and also, in fact, tells us something that how this movement is coming as a threat not only to the global capital and the kind of the alliances it had with number of big corporates, but it also poses threat to number of structures, particularly the structures of dominance in society, in economy, and in politics. So that way, perhaps farmers' movement is considered such a big threat, national threat to national security, because as we know, any threat to national security, only happens when perhaps the dominant interests are threatened, predominantly the class interests, but along with other interests also tied with. So therefore I can see that this farmers movement, why there is so much hostility and animosity, both in the in particularly in the corporate world and its alliance partners in politics, in society, and everywhere. Now I think if we can have one or two short questions, observations, otherwise we'll just wrap up and wind up the session. और है किसी के पास कोई प्रश्न या कुछ कहना है?
Satish, I just want to add to what you said is that Ram is there. Ram, you can ask the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes,
You
Ram,
covered
please.
so many. Yeah. दलजीत, आपने बहुत सारे एक्सपेक्ट कवर किए हैं, लेकिन कमेंट एक आपका चाहिए कि जो फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है और पंजाब का जो उसमें लगातार असर्शन है, वो इस मूवमेंट से कैसे जुड़ता है? हाउ द फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर and the assertion of Punjab and Punjabis related to that, you should comment upon that too. Yeah.
Yes, briefly, Daljit ji, yes.
या जो पहले जो आप कह रहे थे कि जो फेमिनिस्ट इंडिया की जो फेमिनिस्ट मूवमेंट है, उसका जो किसान मूवमेंट के साथ जो उनकी एक क्रिटिसिज्म रहा है, तो अगर if we will talk about these 32 organizations और उनके individual events पे जाएंगे, that criticism will remain valid. बहुत सारी organizations ऐसी होंगी जिनके प्रोटेस्ट साइट पे आपको औरत नहीं मिलेगी. अगर वो वहां पर चना बेचने आई है तो अलग बात है. तो लेकिन अदरवाइज उनकी ना उनके वो एजेंडे पे है और ना उनकी पॉलिटिक्स का वो हिस्सा है. लेकिन जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जिनकी प्रोटेस्ट, जिनकी ये एस्पिरेशन, जिनका ये एफर्ट इस बात पे रहा है कि औरत एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग नीड टू बी एवरीवेयर, वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस इस एजिटेशन का हिस्सा भी हैं. और जो इस पूरे एजिटेशन के दौरान जो डिफरेंट मौक़ों पर वुमेन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने, फेमिनिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने अलग अलग जगह पर कमेंट किए हैं इस एजिटेशन के ऊपर, अगर उनके कॉन्टेक्स्ट लिए जाएंगे और इस मूवमेंट की स्टडी की जाएगी, तो यू विल फाइंड कि 10 में से 5 बार दे वर मिस इन्फॉर्म्ड, क्योंकि ये एक ऐसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं जिनको ज़्यादा स्टडी नहीं किया गया, जिनकी बैकग्राउंड से ज़्यादा लोग वाकिफ नहीं हैं. अब जैसे औरतें इसमें ओवरनाइट नहीं आई हैं. द आइडियोलॉजिकल डिसीजन वाज टेकन इन 2008-9 और ऑन 2008-9 में व्हेन दिस डिसीजन वाज टेकन, उसी टाइम से जो किसान औरतें हैं दे मूव सेपरेटली. वो अपना, जैसे लेट मी टेल यू अ सॉन्ग, दिस इज again from 2008 protest, The song is in Punjabi. One of the line is, "Jathe ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਪਿੰਡ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਕਿ ਮਰਦਾਂ ਪਕਾਈਆਂ ਰੋਟੀਆਂ." The translation is that women protesters are moving from village to village and males are cooking food for them. So this is 2008 protest song. So this context has not been studied. So there are very many women. That's why I'm asserting it again and again that this need to be studied. I'm just trying to be an activist who is trying to put his agenda in front of the professoriate, that this is something that you have missed. Okay, so that is one of the things. Then the Ram's question is, one of the जो महिंद्र ठाकुर के सवाल से भी जुड़ता है कि वाई पंजाब इज रिस्पॉन्डिंग, वो ये है कि इन पंजाब पंजाबीज and farmers are able to relate it to the federal question too. More power to the states. So as agriculture is a state subject, so it could be part of the propaganda too. So they could mobilize it. So this is very much part of it. So that is one of the moral question which these protesters raised to the Punjab government, that this is the question which you should have been raising, which the government should have been raising, that they are intervening in the state list issues. So I think they asserted that moral question again and again. So the Punjab government is supporting to the agitation. It is not just a state that the center is occupied by the BJP and Punjab has a Congress government, so they are supporting the agitation. So these protests have made state government behave in that particular fashion. And one of the big argument was about federalism, that it should have been the state, it should have been the government to oppose this. That's why the government passed the bills in the assembly thereafter. So I think that question will remain there, and it is there. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daljit ji, for making a very insightful and very presentation, which is basically from the ground, because you have observed the movement very closely and the many nuances of movement. Perhaps many of us who are not following it closely on the ground may not be aware. So that way you have brought many issues to this discussion. But one or two issues I would just like to flag here before I wind up. Number one, this entire session was devoted to farmers' question or farmers' movement and pandemic, because this year's colloquium is basically on that theme. And this pandemic, because of as it also came in the morning session on labor and migration, that capital, technology, these issues, particularly in terms of the larger neoliberal agenda, how they have suddenly started taking over the lives of the people in last 1.5 years, particularly in name of this pandemic. And this issue of capital and technology, of course, got aggravated by this pandemic. But nonetheless, they were impinging on this entire issues faced by the farming community for quite some time. Because I remember, as I mentioned earlier also, that 17 and 80s, when these farmers movement were, basically in the news, were gaining ground all over, at least not all over India, but in many parts of India, including Maharashtra, Karnataka, Punjab, UP, Haryana, and some other states. It was said that those were the states which had witnessed green revolution, and therefore, they were demanding better, prices, MSP, and many other things. They wanted a better terms of trade. When the larger issue was the agrarian question, which pertained to agricultural workers, laborers, the poor peasants, the question was of land reforms. The question was of, the rural inequalities and class discrimination and class structure in countryside. And therefore, these farmers and the farmers' movement were seen through different prisms. Through the prism of exploitation, through the prism of ruling class politics, particularly the left and the progressive forces perhaps never, could sympathetically join hands with these farmers' movement at that time. But things started changing in 90s with the new economic policies. And within a very short span of time, 5 to 6 years, I remember 96, 97, the entire movement got flattened. The issues of, terms of trade and other things were simply, completely forgotten. And the farmers were making, headlines for a different reason, for farmer suicide. So therefore, within 5-6 years, one could see the impact of modern technology, the capital, and the larger, onslaught of the global forces on the farming community. And then in recent times, particularly, of course, in fact, here no one can absolve the UPA government in spite of Congress and other political parties, raising of these issues these days. But I don't think that they always had a very sympathetic view of the farmers' issues. Of course, the approach was different and not as ruthless as perhaps the present government is showing. But nonetheless, I find that it is bipartisan consensus so far as the paradigm of development that Professor Mohanty was hinting at is concerned. So ultimately, as in fact all of us know, that immediate issues, because there are two types of issues coming from this movement. One is the immediate, another is ultimate. And how this immediate is related to the ultimate perhaps is more important here for us to ponder over. The immediate, of course, is the survival question, the MSP, the mandis, AMCF, and number of things. The ultimate is that what is the fate, of these, these communities, the farming communities, this sector, the agricultural sector, the countryside, the kind of civilizational discourse we are having today. Could there be any village left in India, a country which was known for its agriculture and known for its villages? Whether that entire, the corporatization of agriculture, could there be any space for, this farming community? The kind of, diversity we have of nature, ecology, and other things, could that diversity will be shared? And therefore, it is a very important question. And as in fact, Ishwarji was also raising in the beginning, that imagination of left and the socialists. How earlier, the peasants, of course, the peasants came in a different way, but still this deep peasantization and differentiation, this theoretical entire framework of the paradigm dominated that discourse. That ultimately, penetration of capital will lead to differentiation in countryside agricultural sector, and ultimately there will be deep peasantization, and the peasants as a community will vanish. All of them will either become proletariat or the capitalists, the rural capitalists. So I think that thinking also has to be revisited. That entire theory, the discourse, need a kind of relook, interrogation. That if we are trying to deal with, engage with capitalism in its new form, then of course we have to reopen all these issues, particularly in terms of the larger, the developmental paradigm through which we have to negotiate the future. So I think that way, this farmers movement, as Professor Mohanty was saying, that it is now going to transform the nature of Indian politics. Of course, in the sense that mainstream political parties, which are tied to liberal democratic process, they are, trying to find, a kind of a new, hope through these movements, because when they have been completely put on the back foot by the present dispensation, they feel that these movements are generating new hope. So, I mean, this movement is also going to transform the nature of political parties in coming years, as he was rightly suggesting. So, I think, thank you, Daljit Ji, and also this Swaiman Ji. Perhaps Swaiman Ji has left due to some interruption in connectivity or something. But he also made a very interesting presentation. Thanks a lot, Daljit Ami, and Ishwar Singh Dost. Ishwar Ji for making this discussion very vibrant and lively, and all those who participated in this discussion. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Yes, over to Survesh.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That brings us to an end of another robust and meaningful discussion. I would like to just thank Satish K for chairing the session and both of our speakers, especially Daljit sir, for a very wide-ranging discussion, and our discussant Ishwar Singh Dost for raising some pertinent questions and meaningful comments.
Thank you for watching the video. Do like and share our video. For more seminars and talk, please subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, comment on the video and don't forget to press the bell icon for future updates.